Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Just weeks into his second administration, and President Trump is already getting rejected by the courts and now by the American people. Gallup headline, Trump's inaugural approval rating is historically low again. Quote, at 47%, President Donald Trump's initial job approval rating for a second term is similar to the inaugural 45% rating during his first term, again placing him well below all other elected presidents dating back to 1953. Trump remains the only elected president with sub 50% initial approval ratings, and his latest disapproval rating, 48%, is 3 percentage points higher than in 2017, marking a new high for inaugural ratings. President Trump's disapproval comes after a string of flubs amidst a policy initiative that most Americans ironically support. Polls show that most Americans support deporting undocumented migrants who have committed violent crimes. But the Trump administration approach has been scattershot, not focused just on violent criminals, and with constitutional rights thrown out the window.
They went into a store without a warrant, went behind the store, asked people for their papers, their IDs, took pictures of people's IDs, took pictures of people, detained 3 folks there. There were citizens that were actually in the establishment as well. One was a military veteran who showed his ID. They still questioned him anyway, even made mockery that the ID may have been fake.
Yes, in Newark, New Jersey, Trump's ICE agents harassed a military veteran, didn't believe the veteran, and refused to back down after seeing his military identification.
They violated people's Fourth Amendment rights to the Constitution. They violated due process in this and 14th Amendment rights of due process. They violated, a lot of the things that we stand on this country, why people came here in the first place.
The deportation rate incompetence has also been seen in several states where agents have harassed Native Americans. Quote, despite possessing certificates of Indian blood, CIBs, and state-issued IDs, several individuals have been detained or questioned by ICE agents who do not recognize these documents as valid proof of citizenship, the Navajo Nation Council stated in a press release. On top of questioning indigenous people who are more American than most of us, the Trump immigration policy has also targeted children born in the United States to undocumented parents. And the polling on that Trump effort of ending birthright citizenship has been abysmal.
Look, I think Donald Trump is, by pushing policies like this, are just trying to eliminate his honeymoon period completely, because this is just not a popular policy. End birthright citizenship for children born to immigrants illegally here. Look at this. Just 35% support. The clear majority, 53% oppose. And I've looked at multiple polls, looked at the question, asked multiple different ways. If anything, this undersells the opposition by a little bit. If you don't, in fact, mention for children born to immigrants here legally and just ask about ending birthright citizenship, the opposition shoots all the way up to about 70%. But this 53% is clearly indicative of a country that does not want to end birthright citizenship. Simply put, this is not a popular policy, and if Donald Trump pushes policies like this, his honeymoon period will squeeze and be even shorter than it was back in 2017.
The courts are also squeezing Donald Trump. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. A day after President Trump announced his plan to end birthright citizenship, there was this.
On the breaking news that we just heard, this judge is blocking the birthright citizenship executive order that came from the president in his first days of office. Jonathan, your reaction here?
Well, this is along the lines of what we just discussed on the air, that this is the most vulnerable executive order of all of those issued by President Trump. The widespread expectation was this result. The Trump administration knew that. There's every indication that the Trump administration invited a challenge because they want to get into the courts in order to eventually make it to the Supreme Court.
And even though the language of the 14th Amendment and previous case law seems clear, the U.S. Supreme Court could conceivably change their interpretation. However, the Trump administration has started off with a string of courtroom losses on several executive orders. Never mind the birthright citizenship effort, President Trump signed an order to fire 17 government agency inspectors general. The IGs investigate waste, fraud, and abuse.
The law says he's supposed to give you 30 days notice.
Yeah,
he didn't do that. Do you think he violated the law?
Well, technically, yeah.
Some of the IGs are refusing to leave just yet and have been given a court injunction to stick around for a month. Most recently, the Trump White House announced a freeze on government spending and grants. Within 24 hours, a judge blocked that order. The next day, the Trump administration tried to back down. As Newsweek reports, a Trump administration memo that on Monday ordered a pause on federal grants and loans was rescinded by the administration on Wednesday. The order had already been partially blocked by a different federal judge on Tuesday. White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt indicated a short time after the memo reversal that the move was made to end any confusion created by the court's injunction and insisted that Trump's funding freeze would remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. This is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze, Leavitt wrote in a post on X, formerly Twitter. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. But that undercut the Trump White House lawyers. Keith Olbermann explained on his podcast.
So the press secretary says Trump withdrew the memo about the funding freeze that the judge had unfrozen, but that the freeze is still in effect no matter what some judge rules, and that Trump deliberately rescinded just the memo in order to evade the judge's ruling. And that's contempt of court. And Trump's lawyers are going to have to explain to this judge why he should not, or in this case, why she should not, put them in jail overnight or, forever for deliberately ignoring her order and having this nitwit Leavitt boast about ignoring her order. Oh, and just to bury Trump still further on this, a second federal judge also ruled that the rescission is meaningless, and he's issued a court order that stays in effect. And Trump can call it whatever he wants, and Leavitt can call it whatever she wants. He can't freeze government spending just because he's president. Can't.
Even in an effort where President Trump is within his legal authority, pardon power, there has been an intense backlash. The 1,500 pardons that Trump issued to the January 6 rioters included 500 who had been convicted of violence or assault on police. Again, here's South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
Number one, he had the legal authority to do it, but I fear that you will get more violence. Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do.
Most recently, what Trump has done is politicize the deaths of 67 people killed in the D.C. air disaster. Trump claims diversity contributed to the crash, even though there's no evidence to support that. And on top of Trump's exploitation of the tragedy for political purposes, his own people are saying things that make everybody in the administration sound really stupid.
Obviously, it is not standard to have aircraft collide. I want to be clear on that.
Phew, what a relief. What Duffy was not clear on was his unreal world FAA administrator. When Duffy was asked by a reporter whether there was even an acting FAA administrator, Duffy transported himself away. President Trump later named an acting FAA administrator. Nonetheless, the image is hardening that this is a Trump administration filled with simpletons, nitwits, liars, racists, and extremists. And as the American people have proven, all of that can be forgiven and forgotten, convicted felon Donald Trump. However, Donald Trump and his team still do not have a policy win. There is nothing they've done that has given the American people any confidence that the economy is getting better, prices are going down, and that this administration is showing legislative or governing skill. Instead, President Trump has only delivered mass chaos, incompetence, and a slew of executive orders that have been blocked in the courts or angered a majority of Americans. And so, Donald Trump's polling numbers are dropping. And just weeks into his second term, President Trump has the highest disapproval rating of any presidential start in U.S. history. It sure happened fast. By the way, the public anger at Donald Trump's exploitation of the D.C. air disaster is growing.
What he has said is not only unprofessional, unpresidential, inconsiderate, of the status of this investigation. But frankly, it is just unhinged that he could even say with any sort of certainty that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies had any part to play in this accident. Remember that 67 people are dead. I hate to get so upset here, but this is something that investigators will really need to pick apart piece by piece, and that is going to take some really significant time. We're not even 24 hours after this crash. We're barely even 12 hours after this crash. And he is saying with a lot of certainty that the blame is on DEI.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Janella, who wrote, "I'm blown away how a person can win the election, but turn around and lose it 2 weeks into the job. This is the idiot people voted for." I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump dropping in the polls as his failures and chaos pile up. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.